You're listening to Pixelated Audio, episode 180, Masters of VGM, part 2.
And welcome back to Pixelated Audio, a podcast featuring game audio, its history, and the people behind it. We're your hosts. I'm Brian, and this is Gene.
Hey, everybody. We're back again with another Masters of VGM. This is now our second year doing the event. It is a celebration of some of our top picks. We're one of the many participating podcasts. I hope this continues, actually. I hope the tradition continues.
Oh, it's great. It's cool. Yeah, I like it. Shouts to Bedroth for, kind of organizing and putting it together. And, this is volume 2 or year 2. I don't know what the title is going to be for it, but...
Masters of VGM 2.
Master of VGM 2. Okay, that's fair. So to be clear, these aren't our favorite composers. These are just composers that we really like and want to, share and bring extra light upon. Some are well known, some not as well known, but you definitely know some of the tracks and some of the games that they worked on. So I'm excited to go through the list. We got some really cool stuff picked out. Tell us about that track that we came in with, though.
So that track that we brought the show in with is from a game that I really enjoy. It's from the original Brandish, which is a top-down sort of turn-based... what would you even call it? Like, it's a turn-based RPG. It's kind of like Shiren the Wanderer type thing. It's from Falcom, and the track is Ruins, composed by... Mieko Ishikawa, one of the earliest Falcom composers. She was there starting in like the mid 80s and worked on music there for another 5 to 10 years. I think she went until about 96 or 7 before she kind of switched roles, but she was very pivotal. I I love this track. I love every version of this track, but it's just like a really great, moody, slow kind of. It's a great way to intro the game, which if you've never played it, you're in a dungeon and you're basically trying to escape.
Yeah, the Brandish 2 soundtrack I'm really familiar with, but I love both of them. They're so good, and all the versions, for everything it came out with. But I think the PC-98 is where it really shines.
Oh yeah,
sure. I think it was designed and just hits all the right spots. It's
also just a really fun game, but make sure to play a version of it that has the actual rotation. It's very disorienting if it just like flips.
That's what does kind of suck. But again, it's kind of a cool game. Did you actually play through it?
I beat the entire game, the PSP version. It was one of my...
Oh, on PSP. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, It was like a surprising favorite. It was one of those like, I don't know if I'm going to like this. 20 hours later, I beat the game. It was like, I really enjoyed it a lot, actually. I love this game.
I know how that goes. I think, man, when did I play Brandish? I think it was it on Super Nintendo? It must have been.
Yeah, right? Well, there was a Super Nintendo version. I tried it out, and as soon as the screen rotated 90 degrees, I lost orientation completely, and I'm like, I am not going to enjoy this, so I did not play it.
Yeah. So, it didn't age well in certain things, but yeah. Anyways, what version would you recommend? The PSP version?
Definitely the PSP version. It's the best one. It's the most user-friendly. It's got, however you feel about it, it's got nice graphics. The kind of that low poly 3D, but it looks nice enough.
No, that looks great. I loved the the PSP remakes of stuff. They always nailed it. I don't know. That's such a weird... Maybe it's not underrated system. I think the Vita's underrated, but
definitely.
PSP had so many like good stuff to like go back to that I always forget about.
Yeah, between the PSP and the Vita, you're missing out if you haven't played some or all of those games that are... Actually, a lot of them have been remade. We're getting way off track here. Let's talk about Mieko Ishikawa, our first of the composers. And the nickname, for those of you who are coming back to us from our last show, we often come up with very silly nicknames. So this is...
they're really bad.
Oh, yeah, they're terrible. It's just like the first thing I could think of. Mieko Ishikawa's nickname is President Falcom JDK.
And why is that, Gene?
Because she was one of the founding members of Falcom's sound team JDK. So that's...
kind of helped lead that group as well. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And folks may know, we talk about this all the time on the show. Falcom was one of the first really prominent companies to kind of start this concept of create a sound team, make it semi-anonymous. It almost doesn't matter who exactly the track comes from. We are still unraveling who made a lot of these tracks even to this day. There's still some not totally sure exactly who composed XYZ. Some of it was secretive. Some of it was just sort of like, we are like a collective of musicians, like we are stronger together kind of thing. There was a lot of reasons for it in the 80s. But she worked on some of the biggest Falcom franchises, Ys, Dragon Slayer, Brandish. She did Star Trader, which I love that soundtrack too. It's not a huge game, but the music's awesome.
Yeah, and worked really closely with Koshiro-san in the early days.
Oh, yeah. The Ys soundtracks, everybody is always like, oh, Yuzo Koshiro. Yes, but not without Mieko Ishikawa. She worked on Ys 2 and 3 extensively. So
amazing duo.
Yeah.
Amazing duo.
I'm convinced if she had stuck around in video game music, she'd be at the tippity top. So
which is crazy because like towards the end of the 90s, she transitioned to more of a management role at Falcom.
Yeah, I'm sure she did a great job. Falcom has had an amazing sound team basically ever since, the 80s. But it is a shame we didn't get to see more of her musical output. But that said, what we have is already pretty great. So
yeah. So we have another track from Ishikawa-san here. This is a track from Ys 2. This was on the PC-88. And this is called Goodbye Adol. And it's an unused track actually in the game. that track was titled Goodbye, Adol. And it's an unused track from Ease 2 on the PC-88. This is a really great track, and it was kind of a spur-of-the-moment pick. But I think we did good because it's just got like this really kind of upbeat swing to it. Bouncy happiness.
It's sort of a doo-wop sort of chord progression
kind of there.
You know, I can see a little bit why it was cut. I don't think Adol's singing sad songs about shipwrecks in this game, you know?
Well, maybe this is like the was intended to be like some kind of, ending track, like where you see him kind of looking out over the destruction or whatever.
Actually, I wanted to bring that up. One of the things that was sort of a founding principle of Falcom's sound team is that they had extremely high standards. So that the fact that this track didn't make it in, I mean, should tell you something, because it's a great track. It's really well composed. It's really catchy. And if this one didn't make the cut, you have to. That should tell you why Falcom has this association with just being, the best of the best VGM from most of the eras where people know them. But yeah, it was crazy. I definitely heard stories of just the turnover of just like how hard it was to write music for the company.
Yeah. Anyways, I think it's time we move on to our next on the lineup here. Mieko Ishikawa, President Falcom JDK. Thank you so much for your contributions to the music industry in video games. Where are we jumping to next, Gene?
All right. I want to jump in with somebody that I don't think a lot of people would know. This is Yuko Takehara. She is a composer that I have very fond memories of because I played a few of her games quite extensively. Again, late era NES stuff. Yuko Takehara is, I call her the interstitial master because she ended up working on a lot of games that were in franchises that people kind of already forgot about or picked up the slack where something was kind of already established. I think she has a great style, but before we get more into that, I think we'll play a track from one of her games. This is Centaur Man from Mega Man 6. That was Centaur Man from the game Mega Man 6, composed by Yuko Takehara, who was a Capcom composer for, I don't know, a decade, maybe even a little longer. And I don't think she's still working on game music anymore. I believe her credits kind of end somewhere around the early 2000s. But yeah, from about the early 90s to like 2001 or 2, she wrote a ton of music for... Mega Man 6, Final Fight 2, Mighty Final Fight, a game I don't think almost anybody remembers. It was an NES kind of chibi version of Final Fight. Street Fighter Alpha, Puzzle Fighter 2, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom. That whole versus fighting series, she was very heavily involved there. I think she even worked on the JoJo's games.
Yep.
Yeah, so... just a lot of the games that you probably know of, but you wouldn't necessarily be able to attach a specific name to. And she worked with a lot of other famous Capcom composers. But yeah,
Right. I almost wish we would have put a track from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure on the Dreamcast. That's one I played a ton of. But we do have another great track here. This is the theme of Charlie or Nash from X-Men versus Street Fighter. So let's take a listen. That was Charlie's theme or Nash's theme from X-Men versus Street Fighter, and those trills happen in both this game and in Centaur Man. So we got a theme going on with that, at least, right?
You can definitely hear a lot of that working on Mega Man influence in this track for sure. I mean, I feel like especially the Versus series has very Mega Man-ish style composition for a lot of the tracks, and I don't think that's a coincidence. And I'm just got to say it on the recording, Mega Man 6 is probably my third favorite Mega Man. At least on the NES. So I don't know if that's high praise or not.
It's a great game. I liked all the Mega Mans. I know that people have very strong opinions about 2 and 3 and
for sure, yeah.
I even have like extremely fond memories of the first one because that's what I got first, and I even got Mega Man 6 like way later on, but I got it as well, and I love that game. The thing that I didn't play a whole lot of X-Men versus Street Fighter. I did like the Capcom versus Street Fighter, but none of the X-Men stuff. Really, I mean, here and there, but like not in the arcades, really.
You mean Marvel versus Capcom, or
I'm sorry, Marvel versus Capcom.
Or there's also there's so many of them. There was X-Men versus Street Fighter. There was Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then SNK versus there's everything.
I played this one a lot. I don't know. I wouldn't say this one was my favorite one, but I feel like it was like a really well composed game. Like if you didn't have anything to play but this one for a couple hours, you'd still have a good time. Great character selection.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I could play all of them and still enjoy it.
Yeah. It's but yeah, again, she's one of these composers that worked on a lot of games that you probably know in passing, but wouldn't necessarily think of. Like, again, Mega Man 6 is not anybody's first thought when they think of Mega Man. X-Men versus Street Fighter is not anybody's first thought when they're talking about the Versus series. It's like, but great work, honestly. And again, another composer I wish kind of stuck around. Fun fact, she also wrote the Boomer Kuwanger theme in Mega Man X, so she kind of ducked in and out of some of the Mega Man games. I think she wrote, was it Slash Man in Mega Man 7? Something like that?
Sure.
I think so. There was a credits list, and that sounds right.
I mean, she has a credits on Mega Man 7, so yeah. And strike what I said about X-Men vs. Street Fighter. I just looked over, and it's actually a game that I probably played last on my Saturn. It's like I'm looking right at it. I'm like, oh, I guess I have played that quite a lot, actually.
I'd like to also issue a very small correction. Way back, we covered on the show Mega Man, the Power Battle, and Mega Man, the Power Fighters. She was one of the composers that worked on some of the arrangements. Obviously, most of the songs were based on earlier Mega Man tunes, but she did quite a number of the covers on there. So again, she's kind of showing up in these places where you wouldn't necessarily expect.
Makes sense.
I think it's time to move on to our next composer, Brian. I'll let you take a pick. Yeah,
I was thinking, you know what? Let's jump up to the top of our list here. Again, there's no particular order. We just wrote them in this fashion. But I'm not trying to pick favorites. It's like picking children, right? Like you can't pick one. This is a composer that we've had the opportunity to speak with in person, and somebody who's just really influential in the game industry. This is a track from Winifred Phillips, actually. And this is something Gene picked out, but I really love this track as well. This is from Sackboy, A Big Adventure, Shoo-Bee-Doo, Hullabaloo.
Shoo-Bee-Doo, Hullabaloo.
Hullabaloo. Yes, that's the track. Take it away, Winifred. right, that was Shoo-Bee-Doo Hullabaloo from Sackboy, A Big Adventure. And this was composed by Winifred Phillips. Just a brilliant sound designer and composer, and just very knowledgeable, gives so much back to the community. We gave her the nickname of the Librarian of Congress because that's where we first met her, at the Library of Congress. She's got a book out called Composer's Guide to Game Music, best-selling book, just an amazing wealth of knowledge. She's worked on some of the largest franchises in modern gaming history: Assassin's Creed, God of War, Little Big Planet, Sims, Total War. She recently won a Global Music Award for Jurassic Park Primal Ops, which is an iOS and Android game, I believe. Mm-hmm. And she's done countless lectures, summits, and again, just teaching others how to succeed in game audio and make that a career. It's just something that she's very passionate about. So
she also wrote an amazing article / interview very recently. You know, we've been talking a lot about firsts here. The Library of Congress just accepted, or fairly recently, just accepted Super Mario Brothers, the theme song, as the first piece of video game music that they are officially preserving. And that's like a big deal. You know, we talk about the Grammy category just became a thing, but for them to basically say video games are important enough that we're going to start preserving this is,
awesome.
Is huge. And so she, talked at length about the song and its influences and what the importance of that the significance of that event happening. So again, she's very much like us. She's really interested in kind of carrying on the history and the tradition of video game music, in addition to just, being an amazing composer.
She knows her roots, and then I think that's something that
100%
can't be overstated, can't be overlooked,
Yeah.
And I think that's why she just has so much guidance to offer people, because of her just history in the business, and writing on the back of all these people that came before her, and really kind of utilizing those skills and learning from them. So yeah,
we didn't really get a chance to talk about the track, but one thing I gotta say about this one that's just so awesome is it just keeps developing. Like, it goes through so much development. By the end, it just keeps crescendoing until it's almost exploding, and it's just like, when it first starts off, it's like, oh, it's kind of like a neat little, it's like a Shoo-Bee-Doo.
Goofy gun, yeah.
It's got like cartoony sounds in there, and then it just, then you have like almost like classic like 70s disco strings in there, and then the choir swells, and then the percussion gets bigger. It's just like this really involved track. And, like when I first saw it, I'm like, oh, it's 5 minutes, probably 2 minutes, and then it loops. But no, I think it deserves its runtime. It is a 5-minute journey well worth going on.
Yeah, it's a good piece of music. So let's move on. What do you want to move on to next on the lineup?
Sure. So this is a composer we've also talked about a decent amount on the show, but somehow doesn't come up nearly often enough. We're going to talk about Jun Chikuma. I think we should play a track first before we get talking about Jun. Which track do you want to start with, Brian?
Well, I think we got to start with the obvious. The iconic franchise that she's part of. So I would say Bomberman World, Area 4.
Yeah, this is not going to sound like the Bomberman that you know, but it's still a great track. That was Area 4 from Bomberman World, aka Planet Ocean, composed by Jun Chikuma, or June the Bomb Chikuma.
Yeah.
Yep, there it is. A little groaner for you out there in the land of the listeners. Jun Chikuma, for those who do or don't know, is synonymous with the Bomberman series. She started right from the very first game and didn't work on every single game, but from like 1986 or something until like 2000, worked on almost every single Bomberman game and did the bulk of the music for it. So, the iconic Bomberman themes, all of that stuff.
Pretty much every Bomberman game in its entirety.
Yeah,
just about, yeah.
She worked with a couple of composers, but even when I looked, it was like 2 tracks. But everything else was by Jun Chikuma. So, yeah.
Yeah, and this track is, it doesn't scream Bomberman to me. It screams like, some kind of deep sea fishing track, but I really like it, and I like the twist on there of kind of this almost like goofy parade-y kind of sound with like this weird ambient water behind it. It's really interesting.
I mean, if you weren't experimenting with electronic music in 1997 in video games, were you even really trying? I feel like everybody had this phase.
Were you even a composer?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think this is a good track because it's not one of the ones that I think, that do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Everybody kind of knows that sort of jingle, but I think this is just a great piece of music. And Bomberman World was on PS1, and I think almost every Bomberman had a different soundtrack. The one on N64, Bomberman Hero, has like a very heavy drum and bass soundtrack. That one's like kind of wild for an N64 game. It's good. Yeah.
So, Bomberman, yeah. I mean, the thing that gets me is we had something at one point planned to do an interview with Chikuma-san, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out. And now I want to re-spark that conversation and try to get something going, because man, she would be so fun to have on.
Yeah, I would love that. We sort of were trying to get it coordinated with the re-release. She had an album that she did in the 80s, just like an independent album, nothing to do with games. And there was a media tour, and they were trying to, get some folks together to interview her. I don't remember exactly what that was, but the album released, and we just sort of something fell by the wayside, never really happened. That was the album Les Archives, which is available on Bandcamp. It's a great album. And even more recently, she had an album come out called Midas Touch. I think both of those are really great albums. They're really not video gamey, though. They're sort of more...
No, it's very different music.
Yeah. But still very cool. I mean, I think she's a very inventive composer. I really like her style.
Right. And she is very much in the kind of Arab music world. She has arabmusic.com, and she plays what's the instrument called?
It's called a ney, which is an end blown flute, which means the hole is sort of the very end, as opposed to a flute, metallic flute where you play from the side. But yeah, it's common in Turkish and Persian and other Middle Eastern music. She's very active in Middle Eastern music ensembles. It's one of those things that you don't normally associate Japanese composers with. But,
right.
But that said, if you've ever been to a university, people often ethnomusicology, there's often a very big cross-cultural study, studying music from traditions around the world. So it's not a surprise. It's not a story you hear too often.
Right. So, and it's interesting because you don't really hear, I guess you can maybe pick some out, some of that influence out in some of the tracks, but I think she really does a good job at sticking to what she feels fits the game rather than what just her general interests are too. And I think she really has a nice balance. Even all of the Bomberman games, they have that iconic Bomberman sound, but there's also really a lot of variation in all those games. It takes a turn all over the place. You can go from one game to the next and hear something very different. So
yeah.
That said, we do have another track here. It's kind of a deep cut. It's
yes, it is.
Yeah, it's called Imminent Defeat. It's the final map from a game called Nectaris or Nectaris.
Nectaris. I always called it Nectaris. I don't know. I've never heard anybody say that word out loud.
Yeah. In fact, I think this is the first time I've ever said it out loud. So let's take a listen and we'll be right back. All right, that was Imminent Defeat, the final map from a game called Neo Nectaris, composed by Jun Chikuma. And this was released in 94 for the TurboGrafx CD or PC Engine CD. And this was a kind of like a reboot or the second installment of a game called Nectaris or Military Madness that was released for a bunch of different systems. Not entirely sure. What did it come out for? Like PC 98, Sharp X68000.
It did come out on PC Engine originally back in the late 80s. I think that one was actually pretty close to launch. It's a weird series because it every couple of years a new version would come out and promptly get forgotten about because
nobody could say the name.
Yeah, it's like a hexagon based military strategy game. It's kind of like a more boring Advance Wars kind of. But they kept making them. They're good enough. I actually did play the original. I enjoyed what I played of it, but it just doesn't have the art style is kind of pretty functional. It's not super exciting, so I didn't really stick with it very long.
I have this Hue card, the original one, and I don't remember actually enjoying it that much.
Yeah.
It's what's not. There's robots fighting on motorcycles and stuff. It's pretty cool, but yeah.
Life moves on. The Nectaris series may come back in 2025, and people will promptly forget about it then too.
Anyways, let's move on to our next composer here. Go ahead, do the honors of picking.
All right, so I'm going to switch this back to an American composer, another more recent composer. This is Sarah Hollywood Schachner. She is an extremely accomplished composer, and this is the theme song from Assassin's Creed Origins. That was the Assassin's Creed Origins main theme, composed by Sarah Schachner. And, you know, I think we just said this on our last episode. We don't often play music like this on the show, that sort of big, sweeping orchestral, like, but I got to say, I mean,
it's really good.
This one sounds expensive, but it's huge. It's huge. It's so good. Yeah.
It's very cinematic. And the thing is, I might have said this on the show before, but one of these, so I play a lot of games, and one series that I've always been kind of really interested in, but has escaped me, has been Assassin's Creed. I've just never really played any of the games. Like I, played a little bit here and there, and I liked what I played, but there were so many coming out, and like there was other things. You just have to pick your poison, right? And even though we don't play a lot of very cinematic stuff on the show typically, I think that's changed. I think we've been playing more than we used to anyway.
I think so, yeah.
But, it's still, it puts you so deeply in the atmosphere and the mood of the game that it's really important that we do bring that up, and play a lot more music from, because I really believe that the just extreme level of detail that she's put into this track is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I've been listening to some of her music lately, and it's just like stunningly good. It's just incredibly well put together. And, I think it's easy to kind of rest on orchestral tricks. You pay an expensive orchestra, you record it well, you do some cheap tricks with the arrangement, and oh wow, it sounds like big in Hollywood. But there's a lot of game soundtracks that are pretty unmemorable that use that kind of thing. Some of the work that she's done is just completely transcends that, and it's just really amazing to listen to. So, we don't have too much to say about her, but she's just an extremely accomplished musician. As a child, she learned to play a bazillion instruments: violin, piano, viola, cello. In jazz band, probably like 3 or 4 instruments. She went on to study at Berklee College of Music, and then moved to LA and studied with the composer Brian Tyler, where she was introduced to his work on Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and basically took off from there and started working on games. Again, Modern Warfare series, Assassin's Creed. She worked on Anthem. She's also worked in TV and films. Recently, she did the 2022 film Prey, which is, part of the Predator series.
Mm-hmm.
That one was trending a little bit. I think folks were seeing a little bit of that. Long story short, she's definitely one to watch. If it's not a name that you're familiar with, definitely keep an eye out for any games that she's working on. It's going to sound amazing.
And I really like listening to this music, especially like right now we're recording kind of late at night. I'm actually going to be in Japan tomorrow, so we're trying to record while we can. But we might do a show from there. I don't know. But this is the kind of music I love putting on like late at night. It really just kind of opens up my mental capacity almost. Like I feel like I can actually like focus, and I don't know, it just feels really good. It's really puts me in this very, deep emotional place. I like it.
Yeah, and if you actually go and sit and sort of listen to the entire Assassin's Creed Origins soundtrack, it does a really good job of kind of like getting you into that sort of, not quite like in the zone exactly, like where you'd be like for coding exactly, but it just sort of, it creates this atmosphere and it keeps you there very well. I've talked to a lot of people where Origins is absolutely their favorite game because it just does such a great job of creating this atmosphere of like what people imagine ancient Egypt would be like.
I was just gonna ask, is Origins the one where they are in ancient Egypt? Because I do know a few of them, but that's
yeah. It was also the first game that was kind of more truly like open world style, where it was like you literally could scale almost anything and travel in any direction. You could climb pyramids and the Sphinx.
I'll say it again, man. That sounds so cool. I don't know why I missed the Assassin's Creed. Again, I had to pick some different route or something. I don't know.
I haven't played Origins yet, but I did play 2 and 4, which I loved. And I gotta say, there's just something really great about they're really architecture simulators. You get to walk around fairly accurate recreations of Rome or the Caribbean or ancient Egypt or ancient Greece. Or
I remember the one I did play probably about an hour of was and I don't remember exactly what the name. You'll know right away, but it's one you plays like a pirate.
That's 4. Yeah.
4. Okay. I remember really liking that. I was like, oh my God, I'm walking around this pirate ship. This is amazing. But yeah, anyways, I got to go back to this, man. This seems so cool.
They're great games to turn your brain off and like look at just beautiful scenery. So I love them for that.
Origins came out on what? PS5? PS4?
No, it's older than that. I want to say, PS4, Xbox One, that generation. So like, 5 years ago, something like that.
Yeah. See, yeah, that escapes me. PS5's been around for like 3 years now, right?
I guess it has, yeah. I think we should move on, though.
Yeah, let's move on. Let's move on to our next artist here. This is Lord of Castle Dracula is the nickname. I guess you all know who this is. Michiru Yamane. And so we got some really good tracks here. I'm gonna start with the something a little different here. So the game is called Oz, or Sword of Etheria in the UK, and the track we picked out is called Versus Oz. So let's take a listen. We'll be right back. All right, that was Versus Oz from the game Sword of Etheria, or Oz in Japan, and this was composed by Michiru Yamane, and this is basically Castlevania.
Yep, that's why we called her the Lord of Castle Dracula. I mean, if you think about it, Brian, wouldn't you say that the Wizard of Oz is essentially the original Dracula? I mean, in the Castlevania canon sense,
Sure, that's, yeah. And I mean, she nails it always. I mean, her style, we recognize it, but it doesn't matter. She's so good. Like her stuff, like the solos and just the, I don't know, sheer like craziness that goes into her tracks is just unparalleled. So good.
It's like symphonic rock that is also like Gothic and Baroque at the same time, but sounds fairly modern. Like, I don't know, she just always manages to nail that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that like it's basically taking like Falcom JDK and then like putting like like that Baroque kind of like classical on top of it or something. You know what I mean? Kind of fits with that. Anyways. Worked at Konami from 88 to 2008, responsible for a ton of the Castlevania work, Bloodline, Symphony of the Night, the Game Boy Advance, DS games, Harmony of Dissonance, Era of Sorrow, Dawn of Sorrow, Portrait of Ruin, Order of Ecclesia. Yeah, but more recently, she's been heavily involved in Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon, and Ritual of the Night.
Which is basically Castlevania with the serial numbers filed off, we all know.
Yeah.
Ukulele. We know what you're playing at. It's obviously Banjo-Kazooie. It's the same deal.
Yeah, I know. It's the same thing. Who are you kidding?
But yeah, those are great games, by the way, if you haven't played them.
They are. We have another track from her, though, and this is from Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom. What's the track, Gene?
Haunted Manor. All right, that was Haunted Manor, not from Castlevania, but from Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom. A second track that sounds like it should be in Castlevania, but isn't.
Yeah. This sounds like Castlevania, but if you had like Joe Hisaishi like doing some of the background sounds in there, like some of the I guess the rhythm and ambience as part of it, kind of has like a little Kiki in there, I guess. Howl's Moving Castle, maybe.
I think I've also mentioned this on the show, but Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom is an amazing Metroidvania. It's
an amazing game.
It's really good. Yeah, I was kind of expecting it to be sort of just okay, but I got so hooked on that one. Soundtrack's amazing.
So
Gameplay's
fun.
great. It's like it's basically, you know, Dragon's Trap or Monster World 3 or whatever it is, but like for the modern era. It's great. Play it. You won't regret it.
Cool. Who are we moving on to next?
All right, I think we got two more composers, and we're almost out. So we are moving on to a composer that I talk about a lot on the Discord, but is definitely time to talk about for real on the show. This is Neve Houston, also known as Chipzel, and I gave her the extremely stupid name of the Bitwise Operator, because, you know, any nerds... Never mind. It's fine. Let's move on to our tracks.
These names are awful.
They're really bad. But an amazing chiptune composer and just an amazing composer in general who started to branch out much, you know, beyond chiptunes and things. Where do we want to start with this one, with Neve?
I think Dicey Dungeons is good.
Let's do it. It's a newer game. Great soundtrack. Check it out. that was the song Fighting Chance from the game Dicey Dungeons, composed by Chipzel, also known as Neve Houston. And this is a really interesting game. It's kind of a game show roguelike. It's kind of hard to explain, but essentially, like, RNG.
I see a bunch of dice on the
you're rolling a bunch of dice, but it's sort of like a very cartoony, almost like Dungeons and Dragons type game. It's really fun.
What it came up for? Like
recent systems,
okay.
last couple of years. So basically, if you've got anything, Switch, PS4, PS5, any of the Xboxes, should work on that. But it's really good, and what I love about her style is punchy, great sound design, catchy, so many cool elements going on. It's a little bit aggressive, but not to the point where it's hurting your ears. But it's kind of like it's really I don't know. It sinks its hooks, I think, into you when you listen to her music.
And it has this track specifically reminds me of Electric Cafe or something like that.
Yeah.
That has basically the underlying like bass and percussion is all more modern instruments. So, we got really great horns and stuff in there, but then Chipzel throws in this square wave or sine wave out of the blue, or like a triangle. It just sounds so awesome and fits like this crazy kind of dichotomy between the two. It just sounds really good.
Oh yeah, I mean, she's been writing chiptunes sort of independently before she got into games. I want to say starting 2010, 2011, and you would shed on anything long enough and you become a master. You become worthy of the title of VGM master. So I mean, any of her recent soundtracks, honestly, even going back to this next game that we're going to play, are just top notch. And every time something she puts out comes out, I either buy it or I listen to it on the streaming services. It's always great.
Yeah. This next track is one of Gene's personal favorites.
It is.
It's called Authority, and it's from the game Octahedron. Let's take a listen. That was Authority from Octahedron, composed by Chipzel, aka Neve Houston, also known as, just in this context of the episode, Bitwise Operator.
I could talk about Octahedron all day, and I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna go on and say that Neve is from Northern Ireland. You may know her from... She worked on the remix albums of Crypt of the Necro Dancer called Chipped of the Necro Dancer. So the way that game works, it's a music game where everything is synced to the beat. But there's, I think, 4 different soundtracks. There's the original, and then there's like 3 other remix albums, which essentially replace all of the music with, this one's obviously a very chip-oriented one, the Chipped of the Necro Dancer. She also worked on Dicey Dungeons, as we mentioned, Octahedron, and even going way back to Super Hexagon, which is one of these like really kind of small scale indie games, but was really hard. So like you could beat it in 20 minutes if you were really, really good, but you'd probably try it 100 times before you got there. So, it's one of those just like it's a really hard game to explain. Have you ever played Super Hexagon, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's kind of like you're trying to avoid the walls of an expanding. It's not always a hexagon. I think sometimes it starts off as like a square or triangle, but eventually gets up to be a hexagon, and you're just like dodging these walls to the beat. Play it. It's a really cool little game. I think you can get it for like $2 these days. But any of the games that are on this list, buy them, play them. They're all great.
Nice. So moving on, we have one left.
We do. We are down to our last composer for the night or for the day, whatever time of day you're listening to this. I'm going to let you embarrass yourself, Brian. What is our nickname for this next composer?
Oh, well, this is Lena Raine.
Uh-huh.
And also known as Lena Raine. Rad-Align because of, Madeline, and she's rad. So...
Sorry, I came up with that one. I put Brian on the spot.
Yeah, I know you did. And
don't worry. He didn't come up with that nonsense. It was all me.
That's like the daddiest joke you could possibly... Anyway.
What? The other character's called Battleline, all right? I'm just following the trend here.
That's... Anyways, Lena Raine, Celeste, Hickory, Moonglow Bay, Guild Wars 2, also worked on Steven Universe and the movie, Deltarune Chapter 2, and just an amazing composer, and we should have her on at some point.
I hope so. She's hard to get in touch with because she's so in demand.
Yeah. We have a track here. This is, well, I guess we'll play Welcome to Moonglow Bay, actually, from Moonglow Bay. Let's take a listen. That was Welcome to Moonglow Bay from Moonglow Bay, composed by Lena Raine.
You know, I don't think there have been many composers that have come out as sort of like the sound of modern indie video games quite the way that Lena Raine has. I mean, Celeste, you know, when that came out, I mean, in addition to just being a great game, it became one of these like almost instant classics. The music was covered by everybody. Like everybody that I knew that does video game music covers has done a cover or 2 or 10 of the game Celeste. And it's, you know, like it's the new Undertale or you know, whatever. One of these games that's kind of in the last 5 to 10 years has become video game music. And what's great is her style is so dynamic. Like I love Celeste. She has...
Me too. Everybody does.
Oh, well, sure. But she has so much versatility. I mean, I've listened to... I own the soundtracks for Chicory and Moonglow Bay. Moonglow Bay is a little bit more kind of samey, like very relaxed, very soothing, very piano heavy. But Chicory is all over the place. It's just... It's a game about like Zelda type painting. Like you're a Zelda character, except you like paint the world different colors. And that soundtrack is wild. It's just so dynamic. Like stylistically, it's all over the place in the best way possible. It's definitely one to check out. And I've just continually impressed by the music that she puts out. And I'm always like, I never know what to expect, but I'm always really excited when new soundtracks come out.
So we do have a track from Celeste, speaking of which, but this brings us to the last track of the show. So if you like what you hear, we have plenty of other episodes available. You can find us on pixelatedaudio.com for all the tracks and show notes and times. We put them up on YouTube. Join our Discord if you want to get in touch, if you want to chat with all our friends, and join a pretty awesome growing community. Anything else, Gene, that I missed?
Not much. I'd say, check out our last Masters of VGM episode if you like this kind of format. This was a really nice excuse for us to highlight some composers and songs that not necessarily don't fit in our usual format, but we get an opportunity to talk about stuff that we don't really. It's sort of an interesting compilation. I've really enjoyed this format, and it's given us a great opportunity to do this.
It's very much in the vein of like our expansion packs, where we try not to do too much research and really just kind of let the music shine. And I think we got some really good stuff that we had showcased today, and some really excellent composers. So it was a lot of fun. And again, shout out to Bedroth for, initially organizing the concept, the idea, and all the other podcasters that are putting out their series of Masters of VGM as well.
Yeah, and make sure to check out the website, Masters of VGM, and you can see all of the other ones. You can see the shows that were last year. And everybody has a slightly different take on it. So even if you like our show or our style of show, we're doing our own thing. So
everybody's got their own take and their own touch. So have a day with it and just go through and listen to all the episodes and
discover some new podcasts, ones that you never heard before. It's a great way to find out about, other people that are doing the same kind of thing. I'm just happy to take part. I'm happy to be a part of this whole thing.
Absolutely. So the track taking us out is the ending track. It's called Exhale.
There's a couple of ending tracks. I thought this one was going to be really fitting to end the show. This is the song Exhale from Celeste.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you back in a few weeks for the next episode. you.